Hi, I'm Ira Deutschman. I'm lucky enough to be the chair of the film program at Columbia University, and I'm also the last male you're going to hear from tonight. I want to welcome you to this special event as part of our 25th anniversary of the Columbia University Film Festival. Seeing so many people here is so gratifying, I can't begin to tell you. I want to thank a couple of people really quickly. First of all, I want to thank our sponsors. If you look at the posters and the program books and all that stuff, you can see who they are, but without their help, there's no way this festival could be what it is today. I want to thank the Film Society of Lincoln Center for the first time, co-presenting the festival with us this year. It gave us access to these beautiful venues, the prestige of the Film Society, and I want to ask you to give them a big round of applause so we can be here next year. I guess the cell phone thing, if you can turn your cell phones off, that's the obligatory thing. It's mine ringing, actually. One last thing, which is that I have to deliver a little bit of a mea culpa, which is that I know that there were a couple of people who were put off by the title of this panel. And I just wanted to mention that it was a gender-challenged person who came up with that title, namely me. And it was pure marketing because the reality is that I knew that doing something maybe a tiny bit out there would help to attract people, and the fact that there's so many people here, I'm sort of seeing that as slight vindication. But in reality, you should just know that we don't believe that women have an easy time in the film business. We all know that that's not true. But what I can tell you is that we are incredibly proud of the record that we have at the school. Numbers that are staggering when you think about it. I mean, just off the top of my head, the fact that in our faculty selects screenings, which will be held tomorrow night at Symphony Space, that 50% of the films that are being shown were directed by women. And one other small fact that I just happen to know off the top of my head is that the incoming producing class at Columbia next year is more than 50% women. It's just something that I don't know why it is. I don't know what they have in the water in Morningside Heights, but whatever it is, we're very proud of it. And at this point, I would like to turn the program over to my colleague, who's going to be our moderator for the evening, Bette Gordon.
Hi. Wow, I am, this is kind of a dream, so it's sort of like seeing your dream being manufactured right in front of your eyes. So welcome all. The way it's going to go tonight is that I'm going to show you a reel that we put together rather quickly. Morgan Faust, who is one of our students, worked on it with me. We're going to look at that. I'm going to say a few more words and then introduce you to the panelists. And we'll begin with some questions and hopefully make this as much of a conversation as we possibly can. So let's go with the reel, which is from the work of the women that you'll be meeting today. Anyway, I hope you've seen all of those films, and if you haven't, make sure that you get them. I just want to read you my introduction that I thought was appropriate for this. A little bit about the film division at Columbia, which is, as you have already heard, a remarkable and creative community. We share a belief in telling the story, the narrative, and that has become the hallmark of our program. We've produced a generation of young filmmakers whose work has set the standard for the cutting edge of the most popular art of our time. We have also produced more women directors than any other film school today. I am pleased and honored. I am pleased and honored to be here with some of these talented directors, all women that I know, and who have been on the front lines of what a lot of us might consider to be the battleground of filmmaking. No matter who you are, it has never been easy to get a film made, whether in the commercial world of Hollywood or in the indie arena. But as we all know, women directors have to work as hard as anyone or if not harder, to get their films financed. In the late 1970s, I read an essay by Linda Nochlin called "Why Are There No Great Women Artists?" She ripped into the myth of genius and examined the conditions for producing art in terms of social class, focusing on art making within a social structure and a social context. Reading this essay made me question everything, especially implicit bias to do with race, gender, and ethnicity, things that we now have become somewhat more aware of. The question, why are there no great women artists, was so simple and logical and so obvious that I wondered why no one had ever noticed any of these things before. But also, the utter simplicity of the question was a wealth of complexity that seemed to only produce more questions. Nochlin adopted a historical view and examined the art world's unacknowledged value system and the intellectual distortions and biases that supported it. So I asked the same question about film. So did many of my peers in the 1970s who discovered that female directors had been absent from the history books, but were in fact responsible for helping to shape the art of cinematic storytelling. Directors like Lois Weber, Alice Guy Blaché, Dorothy Arzner, Ida Lupino, Agnes Varda, Shirley Clark, all were pioneers of the film industry. Women have been directing since the early days of cinema and continue to do so. But the film industry today is still predominantly white and male. Statistics are available saying that only 5% of women, 5% of films made today in Hollywood are directed by women, and only one woman has won the Oscar for Best Director in its 82-year history. There is still a huge disparity between the numbers of feature-length films made by men and women filmmakers. Among the 250 top-grossing films released in 2010, only 7% were directed by women and 10% were written by women. Although women are better represented in the independent film community, only 17% of the over 3,500 films submitted to Sundance were made by women. The number doesn't jibe with the fact that women statistically make up 50% of our film schools. All of these statistics indicate that, of course, there is a glass ceiling. But the directors here today have been working to break it, to challenge those statistics, and most importantly, to bring to dramatic life the experiences and emotions of the contemporary world. I organized this panel because I wanted my women students to see a group of talented, committed, driven, and powerful women working as directors. I wanted my students to be able to visualize themselves directing, to know that there are role models more than I had when I started out. And the best part is that these women were all students at Columbia, along with many others who are not even here today, but who have walked down the hallway on the 5th floor of Dodge, the floor we call the film school at Columbia. True greatness, which are Nochlin's words, is possible for women and men. The challenge is open to anyone who is courageous enough to take the necessary risk of committing to a story, molding that vision into a film, and leaping into the unknown. So, on that note, I want to introduce my amazing panel of women. I have no specific order, so here we go. Shari Springer Berman, thank you. You know her from American Splendor, Nanny Diaries, The Extra Man, Cinema Verite. You just saw the clips. Also, her early documentary work, including Off the Menu, The Last Days of Chasen's, The Young and the Dead, and more. Okay, Cherien Dabis. Did I say that right? Amreeka, the film we just saw, as well as the winning shorts, including Make-A-Wish and Memoirs of an Evil Stepmother. Lisa Cholodenko for High Art, Laurel Canyon, Cave Dweller, The Kids Are All Right, and shorts that she made at Columbia, Dinner Party, and Souvenir, which I remember. And Nicole Holofcener, thank you. Walking and Talking, lovely and amazing, Friends with Money, Please Give, and short that she made at Columbia, It's Richard I Love. And Angry was before that. That was not a Columbia. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just so pleased to be here and to have all of these incredible people. And the way that I thought I would do this. Doesn't she have her foot rest? Oh.
It's okay.
Oh, man.
No, you don't know you really need one until you don't have one.
The way that I thought I would do this is that I'll ask a couple questions, and we'll just try to keep this going as a conversation, like I said, and perhaps, after a while, we can open it to questions from the audience. So I want to talk a lot about process and how these directors have navigated their work successfully to mold their visions into films. So these questions will be somewhat focused on that, and we'll get to other things as well. So the first question, and I know a lot of my students asked me if I could ask this question, so I will, which is getting your first feature made. I mean, it's a big question, especially for a lot of people in this room. How did it come about? Everybody, I'm going to pass it down to everybody. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced? How did some of you actually wrote those features in classes or a screenwriting class at Columbia? So if we could just start with Shari and kind of go down and sort of hit that question first, because it is on the minds of many of our students here. Shari.
Okay, well, first I have to out myself as being slightly a fraud on this panel, because I actually work with a partner who's male. So only half my answers are valid. Well, we started out, Bob, I met at Columbia, who is my partner and my husband. We started out, like, it just seemed very, very difficult to get a feature made. And so we just decided to do whatever we could do. And it's actually kind of a funny story. We wrote a script and got our first agent and went out to Hollywood to meet people and sell our script, and didn't sell our script at all. It was like a very bad experience, like nobody was interested. But we were staying at this bed and breakfast that was run by this really interesting man it was a big pink house, and he wore a tuxedo, and he had this very strange accent. He sort of spoke very affected, like, "Hello, my dear." And it turned out that he was a banquet manager at this restaurant called Chasen's, which was an old Hollywood haunt that had just announced it was closing. And so we were getting rejected during the day and then coming back to this bed and breakfast and listening to these amazing stories about this restaurant and old Hollywood and all the people who work there, and decided we've got to make a documentary about this. I was actually still a student at Columbia, and I will admit this now, I used the Columbia camera. Took it to Los Angeles, but I didn't check it. I put it in the overhead compartment. And we made a documentary, and that was we did it on a total wing and a prayer. It got a lot of attention. It won a bunch of awards, and that was how we got our career going.
Great. And it showed, at the time, was it theatrical release, or how, because documentaries early on didn't get so much theatrical release?
We actually did get a limited, we didn't get like a 3,000 screen thing, but we got a limited theatrical release, and we sold it to HBO, and we actually made a profit eventually, after like 10 years, I think, it made a profit.
Cherien.
First, I just want to say that I'm so honored to be here among such amazing company, in such amazing company. And I just want to thank all these women for trailblazing, because I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you guys. So thank you, and thank you for being such an inspiration as well. Which one of you was it?
It's on the card.
Okay, well, enough of that. Moving on. I was at Columbia from 2001 to 2004, and I actually wrote the screenplay for my first film, Amreeka, in Catherine Diekman's screenwriting class. Catherine read countless drafts, thank you, of that script. And, I honestly don't even know how I got that movie made, because I'm now struggling. I've been struggling for several years to get my second movie made, and it's hitting me all over again how amazing it is to get a film made. It was a huge struggle to find the financing, and once the script was ready, I think when I started Columbia, I just decided I went into, I knew nothing about filmmaking, and I just decided to accept the fact that I probably didn't have any talent, because I thought that way, I'll just work harder. And I did. I think I was so terrified that I didn't have any talent that I just, I was like, I'm going to take in everything. So I was literally a sponge. I absorbed everything, and I started applying for everything. Anything I'd ever heard of, any program, any grant, any screenwriter's lab. And ultimately, my film was really made through these, what I like to say, my sort of postgraduate education through these lab programs. For the first 2 years after I kind of went out with my script, I went out with like a third draft or something, which was way too early. But I was sitting on a mountain of rejections. I kind of went the more traditional route at first, going to production companies and doing sort of meetings in LA and New York, and any opportunity that I could get through the Columbia meetings that are set up, and some of the programs that I was doing. And really it was just like, my movie is not just about women, but it's about Middle Eastern women. So, that was like really not interesting. And I was getting comments like, it's too political, it's not political enough, it's too culturally specific, which, for an immigrant story, I don't really know how you don't make it culturally specific. But so it was a real battle, and at a certain point, I kind of just realized that I could not wait for anyone else to give me the money, that I was going to have to go out and find it. So I started a whole kind of, I decided to make the culturally specific thing work for me. And I decided to start contacting, other Arab peoples that I knew. And it was just literally one person connecting me to the other, to another, and these lab programs. And at a certain point, like everything just sort of coalesced. And I started meeting private investors. And, because at first I was like, private equity? Like, oh, how do you find, is it Craigslist? Like, how do you find that? So it was really a process of meeting as many people as I could, and doing as many programs, from the Film Independent Directors Lab to the Sundance Screenwriters Lab to Tribeca All Access, really anything I could do. And the film was entirely financed through private equity.
Great. Lisa.
I'm having kind of codependent woman problem with her feet. Is there another chair?
Yeah.
Maybe somebody could wrangle a chair for her, or a foot pedal. Anyway,
we could keep changing places, right?
We could share.
Could
Although I don't want to share, so maybe I'm not a good feminist. I like my foot pedal. Anyway, so my years at Columbia were 92 to 97, and when I first entered the program, it was kind of the new wave of independent filmmaking in New York. It lasted maybe a decade or less even, but when I came to the program, it seemed like a realistic goal to come in and write a script and by hook or by crook, like pull together under $1 million, maybe $500,000 and make a feature film. And then, it kind of went on from there. And then the vision was you would go to Sundance. Of course, you would get into Sundance and maybe you'd win an award, and then you'd probably get a distributor, and critics would kind of like your film, and then you'd start a career. And it seemed sort of like, okay, well, if I'm going to take out this much money in student loans and kind of go into this crazy, prospect of trying to become a filmmaker, I'm doing it that way, and that's how it's going to be done. And I was one of those people that my career has not been like this since, but it did kind of unfold that way. And I had this idea for a script. I was studying with Brendan Ward, who I decided was my guy, and I wasn't going to try other teachers. And I just stuck with him. He liked this script that I was writing called High Art. And I think Lenore de Koven liked it too. And I felt like, these are my teachers, and they like it, so this is the one. And I just kept developing this script, and probably over the course of 2 or 3 years. And through... I think it was like Michael Hausman, like a producing class. I met this young kind of upstart editor guy who had an Avid, and I did a little freebie project for Michael Hausman. And, you know, it's the way it works in the film business. It turned out this guy was, you know, married to somebody at the time who had a ton of money, and my antenna went up, and I found that out in kind of a cryptic way. And then I ran into him in a Barnes and Noble about 6 months later, and I said, "So, how you doing?" And he says, "Oh, how you doing?" And I, "Good, I got this feature and I'm gonna make it." And he said, "Great, you know." I said, "Well, maybe you want to get involved." He said, "Well, maybe send it to me." And he ended up paying for it. And he became my producer for all this other work that I've done. So he's like a lifelong friend now and my producer. So it's weird how you find your way. And I really, you know, if I could say anything about anything, I would say, you know, have your intention in place, and if you can really kind of articulate it and stick to it, it might not unfold the way you fantasize it will, but, you know, there's a good chance some of it will. So go get them.
Good. Nicole.
Okay. I came out of film school with a script and the short film, and I got an agent. I feel like I want to say I got it at Symphony Space, but I'm not certain because I don't remember anything. But and he struggled for a short time to, or maybe I don't know, and to help me get me to direct this screenplay that I wrote, which was not Walking and Talking. It was not my, and did not end up getting filmed. And after a while, he sent me a Xerox bill, and I knew that was the end of my agent. I mean, like a $400 Xerox bill, and anyway. And so I had to find a new agent, and I eventually did. But what I did was write a new script. I thought, you know, not to be pushing the same script around. It had gotten around. It had a lot of general meetings from this agent and from the short film. And the fact that the script was similar to my short in tone, probably like all of my movies end up being, without even trying, but I think that helped people see what I could do. And so I wrote a new script, and that was Walking and Talking. And I gave that, the girl who produced It's Richard I Love, my Columbia short, knew Ted Hope, who at the time was just starting this company, Good Machine. And boy, was I at the right place at the right time. Because he really liked Walking and Talking. He said it was a mess, but he would give me notes, and James Schamus gave me notes, and we shot another short film. I think they gave me some short ends or something to make another short to build my case. And 6 years later, they raised the money. Ted did. It had been at different studios. It was like almost at Miramax. It was almost somewhere else. I got a cast. It fell apart. I got another financer. It fell apart. Then he got these English producers. They were called Zenith, and helped and asked if they would come on board as producers. And they helped raise the money from 3 or 4 different foreign distributors. And that was how the movie got made 6 years later. It was $1 million. And that was that.
Great. And just, you know, since also you brought it up, Cherien, the second feature, it's often been said that if you can get the first one done and out there, will the second feature be easier or harder or, yeah. The second chair is definitely better.
Thank you. Thanks. Don't look at me.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Okay, so just quick answers here, just or you know, short answers. Second feature, harder, easier, you know, just anything you might want to say about that if it's relevant to your work. Shari, start with you again.
Well, I talked about my first doc. My first feature was actually produced by Ted Hope as well. So this should be like a Ted Hope shout out here.
Yeah.
He's the friend of the female filmmaker. And that was American Splendor. And you know, something weird happened to me after American Splendor, which was it got a lot of attention, and we got offered all these big studio movies and went through that crazy, I think it might have been like 3 years of like having movies almost get greenlit, like big movies, you know, $35 million, $45 million or more movies. And getting a cast and then having it fall apart, and then getting a cast and having it fall apart. And that led me to the Nanny Diaries, which was, you know, so I wound up, I spent years making documentaries, and then American Splendor, which paid very little, so I was actually into doing a studio movie and making some money at that point.
And so it came together. Yeah.
What? I did on that movie, but I haven't ever since. That was it. Because I hated the experience of it, so I went back to making independent films.
Okay, interesting. Cherien, you're about to go forward.
Literally.
Right.
The green light could come at any moment.
Yeah,
with
we
my
have the
phone.
phone here in case it comes while we're talking. Yeah.
I was actually not supposed to be on this panel because I was supposed to be gone by now, but I've been saying that I'm leaving for months. But I really am. I really promise. I'm leaving. I'm leaving Saturday. Yeah, I'm on the verge of starting prep. But the second movie was a bitch. And I think, you know, it's really surprising because I had a similar experience where, you know, the first film got a good amount of attention, and it was surprising how many people wanted to work with me, and you know, I felt all this pressure to make the second film, and it was financed before I had written the script by a totally independent financier, and then that fell apart before I finished the script. And then again, it came together and fell apart. And then again, it came together. Like literally last year, we were on the brink of going into prep when we lost a chunk of our financing. So it was a really big struggle. And I think what made it more difficult than my first film was just that I wasn't expecting it. And the fact that it, you know, kept coming together and then falling apart was really tough. But I kind of gotten to the point now where I'm like, wow, it's never going to be easy. And when you accept that, it is what it is. And, you know, you just sort of keep going.
Yeah. Lisa?
Not dissimilar, you know. I'd made this first film that did well in its own terms and stuff, and I thought, oh, well, now for sure somebody else is going to pay for this, and it's going to be, you know, I'm not going to go to a major studio and get this made, this next film, but it's more commercial, and it's got these actors in it that are known, and this is going to be a cakewalk. And it really wasn't that at all. And you know, what becomes easier is having meetings. You get more invitations to meetings, but that's kind of what happens. And so anyway, it you know, it was kind of complicated to get that movie made, and we finally did it with equity financing. It didn't go with a company because there was no sort of good deal on the table. So it was disappointing in that way. Yeah. But I think what you say is true. I think if you know, just kind of keep in mind that it's always going to be a little easier in some ways and kind of the same difficulty in all the same ways, then you don't get, you know, you don't sort of trip over yourself with all these sort of fantasies about how much easier life is going to be.
You push that rock up and it comes down, and then you keep pushing it back up again.
It's kind of your job. Like if you have
job.
the you know, stomach for that, then you'll make it. And if it turns you off, then you should find another.
Yes. What about Nicole?
Am I going to be last every time?
No, next time I'll start with you.
I just feel a certain pressure to be really fast.
I have a question for you after this.
Oh, no, I'm kidding. It's kind of similar, you know. I took my time writing a script that I really wanted to write, and I think the budget was less than my first movie, and it was really hard. It got distributed. I mean, the distributor bought it after I made it, thank goodness. But it was still a little rocky. I mean, it wasn't 6 years, and I did have a feeling in my gut like this will happen. I didn't feel the way I felt before I made my first feature. Was like, forget this. Like this is gonna take. I can never do this. I can't wait this long. I have to get on with my life. And between those two movies, I kind of felt like no matter what, this will get made. Somehow it'll get made. My first movie did well enough. I don't remember being that tortured, but like I said, I don't remember very.
No memory. Well, I have a kind of a hard question that I want to ask, and I'm not sure what kind of an answer we can get, but the question is, what given that you were students and that you make films and that you're artists, what is intuitive and what can you learn or what can be taught? How much do you find that you've fallen on your intuition as you've moved forward? I mean, you've been in classes and had, some training. So, do you feel that there's, an element of things you can learn, or is it more intuitive? I mean, I can throw it out to any of you if you want to go first. Anybody? It's kind of a weird question, I know, but I'm just curious about it.
Well, probably the intuitive things are the things that make you unique, that give you your signature voice, because they come from your unique intuition. But I do think that things that are more managerial, things that are about how you organize yourself, how you move through a situation, how you talk to people, how you cast people in principal roles like your art director or your cinematography, like those sorts of things I think are really well learned through experience. Mm-hmm. And then I think all the stuff about, is the script really right? Is it ready? Is the story really coming through like in a way that resonates for you? Or are these actors really the right people, even though, whoever's going to give you money likes them? Like, are they really the right people for this story and for you? I think that's the kind of stuff that is just, it's just your own singular intuition.
Anybody else have a feeling about that? Is there anything
Do
that
you
you
mean
feel can really be
intuition in terms of intuitive, like your talent, or?
Well, for example, I mean, casting. It's something that we say. Well, we understand. Who we want. We have lists of actors, etc. But at what point, or when you find your DP? I mean, Cherien and I were talking earlier because she's just in the process of bringing a cinematographer on. So, at what point, are you just working from pure intuition, or where is it that the thing that you learn how to do takes over? I mean, I don't know if there's even an answer to this question, but I ponder it a lot, especially teaching, is how much can I teach and how much is really like inspired through just somebody finding the answer inside themselves?
I don't know if this answers the question, but I'm going to take a crack at it anyway. I kind of feel like everything can be learned, but the most important thing to learn is to trust your intuition.
And you can inspire people to trust their intuition, which is something that you can give them over time. Yeah. And
I think that's something that can definitely be done in film school, because you're in an environment where the stakes aren't high, yet. They might seem like they are, but they're not. The whole purpose of it is for you to like find your voice and start to really connect with yourself and figure out, what your intuition feels like, sounds like.
But I think that there's that funny fine line, which is learned, that when your intuition is out of sync with the apparatus under which you're making the film. So, what you can learn is like where to sober yourself and say, I've got to modify my intuition because it's not going to push this forward.
Yeah. And there are times where you're going so quickly that to think is not possible, so you're falling back a lot on something that, people either have that intuition or they don't. And I guess it's something that you can develop.
It's funny because some of the stuff that I use the most is that I learned in film school are things like, I was just saying this over dinner, like I learned how to board a movie. And that sounds like it's not the most creative aspect of being a director, but when you have a limited number of shoot days and you have to look at your script, to have an innate understanding of scheduling is going to give you the leg up, so that when some line producer hands you a document that makes no sense and doesn't work for the way you want to shoot the movie, you can say, okay, I want to do this, 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 and this, and really understand it. I think that some of the mechanics, also just walking on the set for your first film, I didn't know, I walked on the set, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? It's like, you don't really know, because it's not like something that you can it's not, most jobs you get to practice, this you don't get to practice that much. But if you understand, if you can give off the air of having a confidence, that's half the battle.
Yes.
Of getting your actors to not be terrified that they're working with an inexperienced director and that you have their backs and you're going to get a good performance. you know, your crew, who, especially if you're a woman, looks at you like, oh God, who's this chick, you know, whatever, to believe in you. It's that, having that kind of knowledge really is important.
Yeah.
I think it's important too to know the difference between your intuition and your ego,
Right.
which I think a lot of people confuse in this industry.
Yes. Yeah. You all of you have incredibly strong performances in your film with characters who are complicated and who we don't see very much in mainstream films, and we see even less given the slate of films that are out now. I was going to ask Lisa this first, but anybody else feel free to chip in. How do you get three-dimensional characters on the page? I'm talking about script. When you're writing, how does it look? I mean, obviously, everybody has their own way of writing. Are you more descriptive? Are you dialogue-based? Can you tell on the page if there's humor? Or do you have to wait for other people to read it to see if they laugh? I mean, so basically, the question is about character and how you get it first on the page before you even get to the set.
You know, it takes me a really long time. It's a lot of drafts, and I guess my bottom line is, you know, is it at the place where each character feels distinctive from every other character, you know, and sort of is doing not only like the job to serve the story, but feels like, you know, living and breathing, and I can kind of feel their essence when I read their stuff in the script. And, you know, somebody said to me once, like, just write it till it breaks your own heart, whether it's funny or sad or whatever. But, you know, I think that's true. If you can, like, have some kind of visceral reaction to the characters you've written and feel, you know, kind of an identification or an empathy with them, then, you know, like, you've kind of pulled them off the page and they're close to being put in a film, for me.
Mm-hmm. Nicole, what about you in terms of what do your scripts look like? Are they heavily dialogue-driven, descriptive?
Not a lot of description. Probably too little to please studios because they're confused. Yeah. I hate reading scripts that tell me about the character and the description of the character. It just really bugs me. And so I describe, you know, attractive 35. You know. And they're all attractive and 35. Yeah, I feel like let it come out in the story, and I think that's to my detriment sometimes. And I've added things in to make things more clear for readers, but it's mostly dialogue driven, and I do have a lot of description about the dialogue. Like if it's confusing, you know, those parentheses are very helpful. Sarcastic, joking,
the bubble.
Yes. And that helps. But so far, that's worked for me. Mostly, that's all.
Okay. Anybody else? You two? What do your scripts look like? Especially Shari, with this combination sometimes in, say, American Splendor of formats of some documentary and some fiction. Were the documentary parts scripted of Harvey, the real Harvey Picard?
You know, I'm trying to remember how we did that. I think we wrote like exactly like documentary interview. We knew we wanted to do him in like what we wanted it to look, so we did describe that. But I think we just said Harvey will talk about, because Harvey had his things that he would always talk about. So I knew I did the interview with him, and I knew that if I sort of pressed the right button, he would say like, oh, it's all fake, or, you know, I mean, he surprised me with certain things, like the fact that he never read the script about his own life. That was, I didn't expect that. But so I think we just threw a few lines in, like, you know, Harvey talks about how, you know, he is a grumpy guy, you know, or, you know, obviously we allowed him to say it in his own words. You know, Bob and I did this thing where for many years we wrote. I don't know if you do this. I know you guys write also, sometimes not for yourself. So we would write for other directors or for studios, and those scripts always looked different from the scripts that we wrote for ourselves. And we would always say, you write for the studio versus writing for yourself. And those scripts, like, would always have these sort of obnoxious descriptions of characters that tell you, you know, like, the funniest woman you've ever met in your entire life, you know, like things like that, that, like, you know, how would you know that from just seeing a person? But that's
like
what...
wound so tight, right? It's like wound so tight, but with a heart of gold.
Right, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All the time.
That's exact, and they want that. They want you to tell them exactly what that character is, and then not actually, you know, dramatize it at all in the script. So we'd have our sort of fool them scripts and our, like, just for us scripts. Now I'm never going to work again as a screenwriter.
Cherien, did you have 2 languages in your script? Were you writing in both languages, or did you translate later? How did that work?
I wrote it in English, but for the Arabic lines, I was thinking it in Arabic, so it was an interesting sort of process. But it was all written in English and then translated. And it was just a lot of drafts, a lot of drafts on the first film and the second film, and just a lot of layering and, you know, getting to know the characters, really getting to know them. I mean, they do actually kind of become real people at a certain point.
And also, especially in your case, and in everybody's case, but your film is so close to your own personal experience growing up in the Midwest, in Ohio, and I mean, I think it's true for everyone that your personal experience really filters into the characters that you create. Do you want to just say a little bit about your story and how it kind of, every time I saw that clip, and when I see the older sister, I think there she is. You know, I could really recognize you. Yeah, you're all of them too. Yeah, but just something about your personal experience into that film.
Yeah. The film is semi-autobiographical, and it's based on my family's experience in a small town in Ohio during the first Gulf War, though the film takes place at the start of the 2003 Iraq War. And the characters were very much inspired by my family, so it was an interesting process creating them. And I think that there was a point where I was staying too true to the reality of what happened and to the real people, and you know, and this was a point rather early on in the process of writing the script where I just really had to make a break from reality and give myself the freedom to fictionalize and dramatize and create characters who were, you know, who were not my family, and you know, but I am very much inspired by real people often. So you know, my second movie as well, I have 4 sisters, and there's 3 sisters in the second film. So, and my family too, they've gotten to the point now where, you know, my sisters will be sitting around and one of them will say something she thinks is funny and be like, Cherien, did you get that? So they're loving it. I mean, it's great. It's like free material.
Nicole, you too have a very close relationship with Catherine Keener, who's an actress who's been in all your work, and what's your collaboration like with her, and how important is it, you know, to the development process in terms of writing the script, and just, you know, how do you inspire the people that you work with, who are always such a great ensemble, to try things out and to sometimes go off script, or what they bring to you in that way?
Well, the stuff that I've written after I met Catherine, after Walking and Talking, I wrote for her. You know, I really pictured her in it, and I knew what she could say. And I knew that if something wasn't quite working, she could help me with it or say it in a way that would make it work. She and I would read the script, or she would read the script, and at this point, the trust is so deep that she could say, this is kind of dumb. This is kind of corny. I'd say, is this stupid? Yeah, it's a little stupid. I thought so. So we felt safe enough to do that, and not a lot of talking. You know, both she and I are not big talkers in terms of me directing and her being directed. I'll give her, you know, short, simple direction. Sometimes she actually says she likes me in her eye line, which to me is so odd. I try to get out of anybody's eye line, but she, I guess, just looking at me, she said, helps her access what I need from her. And, you know, we have it's a very intuitive connection, you know. If she's crying in a scene, I'm crying. I'm standing at the monitor, I'm standing in her face, and I'm crying. And, you know, she's acting out what I once felt, you know, if it is autobiographical. Like that, I guess.
What about in The Kids Are All Right, where you had, you know, an incredible group of actors? How did you give them room to improvise, or did it just happen? How do you sort of empower your actors in all your films, but in Kids Are All Right, to find sort of their own thing?
Well, I learned early on, because I sort of got admonished by Annette Bening to stop talking. So then I remembered, oh, I'm over-analyzing this. This is driving her crazy. Yes. So once I kind of sulked that out and got over it, everything turned out really nice, and I felt much more... Did she say that to you on the set? We had a little moment in a hardware store. One of my least favorite moments on that film. And then I felt like, and then I felt really comfortable with them. Like, they got what those characters were, and I was really confident that they were just going to roll with it, you know? And so I found that if I just let the camera roll, like before the take, before I called action or cut, they'd come up with some really funny shit, and I could just, and it would be good for them, because they were ramping up into their scene or their character, or like they just, you know, ended it in some way that was kind of hilarious. And a lot of that stuff ended up in the film. Oh. And I think it served to make it feel more organic, because they made themselves laugh, or it just seemed incredibly idiosyncratic, and I never could have written it myself. It was just them, like their spin on the character.
Right. Have any of you done more sort of improvisation, either before, you know, in some kind of rehearsal period, or is it ever just on the set? I mean, is it something that any of you feel comfortable doing, or not so much? Do you?
I mean, for me, it really has, in the times that I've done it, it's just come out of feeling incredibly confident about the script, knowing that the script is really tight, the characters are really there, I'm really clear what the characters need to be doing, the actor is really confident as well, and then we can just go off script. But I think coming at it the other way seems like a train wreck to me, but I've never tried it filming.
I've done that in rehearsing. I mean, if I feel like a scene is kind of weak, it's not really working, let's just sort of try it. And not all actors are as good as others, so it can be awkward. You know, like sometimes I'll let the camera roll after the scene is over, and an actor kind of just sits there because the lines are over, and then they kind of look at me. And I feel like I'm torturing them, whereas the other actor I can tell wants to play, you know, so you have to have a good match. But I've done some improvising. Yeah, I mean, I'll always let actors add little stuff, and often it can be great. But usually when we're reading the script in advance, or I'll try to get them to say some stuff if I think my scene isn't so good.
And Cherien was the young boy. He was a non-actor. So how did you work with him to sort of bring him up to speed, let's say?
I rehearsed a lot. I rehearsed as much as possible with the two lead actors, with mother and son, and I think that was very necessary. I did some rehearsals with the DP and the camera present as well, so that the non-actor could feel really comfortable and sort of get used to the camera. And there were moments where I was very freaked out, where I thought, you know, there was one scene in particular where he just could not keep a straight face. I don't know I can't remember what the line was, or, you know, his mother says something to him and she's really angry, and he just like kind of, you know, bursts out laughing.
That's right.
And I was getting so mad in rehearsals that, you know, and I was really freaked out before shooting. I mean, just before shooting the first feature, I think I was just like utterly terrified. Funny how that fear sort of goes away though when you get there. You're just like, you're there and you're like, okay, what's happening? Yeah. But we did do some improvisations, and that helped a lot. And just getting him comfortable with the other cast members, and, you know, making him feel confident, making him feel like he was doing a great job, and, you know, yeah.
Shari, casting is something that we all, you know, really spend an enormous amount of time doing. I mean, the adage is that, you know, your job as a director is 90% making the right choice in casting. And I think it's so interesting that your work, you know, even based in documentary, gives you this whole access to real people. So, you know, how do you think that is between your documentary work? Did that help you, for example, in casting Paul Giamatti as Harvey? I mean, what a brilliant, you know, wonderful choice.
Thanks. Yeah, he's pretty good.
Kinda.
I think we made the right choice.
Yeah.
I actually was a casting director before I was a director. I made, like, post-Columbia, one of the ways I made a living was working as a casting director in commercials, both with real people and with actors, SAG actors. I love casting. That's one of my big pleasures of making a film. So it's something I really take a lot of time on. I mean, on Cinema Verite, we had to cast a whole family, and they were based on real people. And even though most people hadn't seen anyone who was born after like 70, I don't know, anyone who was born who's under like the age of 50 did not see the original documentary. I always knew that I wanted to use pieces of the real documentary in the movie. So it wasn't just looking for what people looked like and how good actors they were, but it was also putting this family together. It drives me crazy when I see a movie and there's like a brother and sister and they seem completely, unless it's part of the story and they're adopted or whatever, it should feel like a family. So we put pictures up and we would put the picture of the American family, that famous photograph of the Loud family, and then we started putting pictures of actors up next to it. And we were casting not a role, but all of the roles, everybody's energy. It was all about their energy and how they, and I did a movie last summer that we're editing now called Imogene, and we knew we had Kristen Wiig, and then it was all about casting around Kristen and finding the people that matched her in energy and or didn't or worked opposite her in energy. And Annette was played her mother, Annette Bening. And you know, so that I think is really, really crucial. I honestly believe that if you cast the wrong person in a lead role, there's really very little you can do to save the film. I really do believe that. And nowadays, I do have to add, because I know everyone on this panel has dealt with this, you will get pressured to get financing to cast crazy people in parts. I mean, not crazy in and of themselves, but crazy in the role, like totally wrong for the role, but they have really good foreign numbers and people love them in like Albania. And that's, you know, it's like just the craziest thing. And if you do that, you get your movie greenlit, but then that's your movie. That's the movie you live with forever. And it's really a tough, you know, decision to make.
I've had to deal with that a lot with my current film. Like, you know, as you saw from the just scenes from Amreeka, like there's no one that you know in that movie. And I'm, you know, I make these movies with no one, with no name actors. So the second film is similar, but there's one role for an American actor, like a male in his, you know, mid-50s to mid-60s, and it's just hilarious, like the names that have, that have come up. You know, these can you imagine like this ensemble of, you know, kind of non-actors and no-name actors, and then there's like Richard Gere walks in.
Yes, right, for that small
like,
part.
I could get my movie made. So it's like the question has come up, like, you know, do you kill your movie to actually get it made, or do you hold off?
It's a hard question. Yeah. What about you two, both of you, for casting? I mean, I think it's such an interesting. Everybody has their own way of going about it. For getting. Did you have Julianne first, and then Annette after? How did that work?
Yeah, I actually. The film had a couple incarnations. I had actually cast it with Julianne and then two other people. That once I went into further drafts, I realized those other people were not the right people. So I had to back up. And, you know, it's the same thing. People kind of give you their laundry list of who they think will get you a green light and get worth money and stuff. And I feel like that's where that question of instinct comes in. If you follow that lead, like, it's a disaster. You know, once you let go of what you think is really going to make the movie work and is best for the movie, you know, and within reason, within, like, I think these people are semi-marketable, or, you know, could be if in the right ensemble or whatever. I mean, if you know, you're looking for $20 million, but everybody you want to cast is, like, from your neighborhood, it's going to be hard. But yeah, so that was a situation where they wanted me to cast certain people, and I just said, you know, I'm going to stick to my guns on this one. Like, there's only certain people that I think could actually pull this off. And anyway, it's hard.
And I also see somewhere where you barely auditioned Mia. Maybe she sent you a videotape. I mean, it's brilliant. Yeah,
I had, like, barely seen her maybe in treatment.
Yes.
And then my sister called, who has a really keen eye, and she said, "This girl is like a gem. You really got to watch this girl." And I was like, "Okay, I sort of know who she is." And then I knew that she was coming out in that Tim Burton movie, so I felt like, well, my sister thinks she's a gem, and Tim Burton thinks she's a gem. And, and then she put herself on this video and beamed it to me from Australia, and I was like, sort of, and I could sort of hear the Australian accent. It was made me nervous, but I sort of felt like maybe she's a gem, so I kind of went with it.
Right, and you went with your gut on that. Yes.
Yeah.
Nicole, what about the ensemble cast? Are you auditioning people, or how is that working for you?
Kind of a combination of both things, of having actors in mind. And this last movie that I'm hoping to make, it's been really hard casting. It's what Shari said. It's like crazy suggestions. You know, you say you want a 50-year-old woman, and they suggest 32-year-old women.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, put some glasses. Oh my God! And I have to say that there is one time I did buckle. I was like gonna just say, I just said, fuck it, okay, I'll offer this actor this part, and I had this sinking feeling, and she passed. And
Off the hook.
I was very relieved. I am very relieved because then the movie just died because the studio and I couldn't agree on anybody, and I figured I'd rather not make it. It's just I'll kick myself for years, and so then we finally agreed. After I said I want my movie back.
Oh, and then you made it.
They were like, yeah.
Okay.
No, I haven't made it. But
This is the one coming up.
Yeah.
What about somebody like Christian Bale? When you cast Christian Bale, Lisa, was that an audition, or was that just, you know?
No, you know, this was a while ago. This was before.
Yes. He became a super famous.
He became superhero.
Yeah.
But it was funny because it wasn't, you know, with people like that, it's kind of offer only, but he wasn't of that stature. So we did have a meeting, and we met at this hotel and had a drink. And at the end of it, I said, so, you know, something. And literally this was like, I don't know, an hour into this conversation, he said, no, I'm not auditioning for that part. I want to do that other part.
Oh.
And I honestly thought, so this was in the film Laurel Canyon, I was interested in him for the guy who plays Fran McDormand's lover, like the music guy.
Yes.
And he wanted to play the straight man. And I was like,
Yeah. Wow.
And, you know, I kind of thought, oh my God, I can't see it. And I had this kind of loopy feeling. But then I thought, I didn't want to lose him. Yeah. So I was like, I'm gonna pull it out. I'm gonna figure it out.
And Frances McDormand is somebody that you've worked with a bit. Nicole, twice? No, just once? Yeah. Once. Oh yeah, and it's and also in Laurel Canyon, and so you both worked with her. And is she somebody who you feel that same simpatico with that you do with Catherine Keener?
Well, I'd love her to be in more of my movies.
Yeah, she's an amazing actress.
She's just one of those people you can't tell them what to do. You know, just that face. I think she's just amazing.
Yes. I want to ask the question. I'm going to throw it out to you guys soon, but I want to read you a quote from one of our alumni, Kathy Bigelow, who we are so proud of and so happy that she's the one woman in 82 years to win this award, which I guess was also I think 3 other times women were nominated but didn't receive it. Jane Campion, Lena Wertmüller, and Sofia Coppola, right. So who knows what's going to happen in the future. But Kathy said that she doesn't classify herself as a woman director. In an interview, she said, I quote, "I wait for the day when the modifier can be a moot point, as in woman director." I don't know how I feel about this. I'm curious to know how you do. Do you agree? Do you prefer not to be called a female director? Are you comfortable with that label? I don't know. I mean, I think it's a hard question.
I tried to get you to change the name of this thing.
Yeah, that's right. What did you want it to be?
Just directors.
Directors,
from
right. I
Columbia.
think you said that. Yeah,
And
yeah.
just it happens to be us.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I just feel
Directors
like
of a certain gender.
Right. Right. Just directors from Columbia.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Or
So-
just directors with black boots.
Right, right. And dark clothes. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like as long as we keep saying this, it's just keeping us in the ghetto of ourselves.
Yes.
How, honestly, how could it be anything positive, right? If it has to be modified, it's like handicapped. It's just not.
Uh-huh.
I don't find it particularly modern.
Right, right. You don't think it's necessary.
It's funny. I mean, I feel the same way, but I'm also proud to be a woman, and
Yeah.
I'm proud to be doing this, and I'm proud to be doing it when it's not much more difficult. And I'm not just a woman; I'm a Middle Eastern woman, and I'm like all these other things. But it's just so silly that they would want to call you a female director. Like
They don't call you a male
duh.
director. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I don't know why it just feels irrelevant, and yet, because it is more difficult, I do kind of, feel proud of it. Like I feel proud to be up here with you guys.
Yeah. Yeah. What about
And Catherine Bigelow makes these films that are classically male.
Yes.
It shouldn't be, but like that's not. She really bucks the trend of what female-driven movies are supposed to be like, and so she has an even harder. I think most of her action-y movies were done independently. I would imagine that before Hurt Locker, she had a hard time getting hired by a studio to do an action film, which is, her strength. So I completely agree with it.
And yet, we want to empower other younger generation of women to do what we're doing. So, I mean, are there times maybe when it is appropriate, like in a situation like this, or times, out in sort of work-related fields where you don't feel that it's responsible? I don't know. It's a really difficult question, one that I myself don't have an answer to, and sort of debated whether I would even do this panel for a long time because of that very thing. But I don't know. It just seems.
I think it's empowering if we just show up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it might have been necessary at a certain point in time, but I think now that there's much more representation, it's not great.
Well, you heard those statistics.
No, the
5% is
statistics are
pretty
horrible,
bad.
but I don't think it's going to go backwards where there's just like, an invisible other gender,
Yes.
that there's no
Yes.
representation.
Yes.
So I think just kind of showing up and having it be an integrated, kind of seamless, we are here and we are included,
Yes.
and not distinguish it is
Mm-hmm.
to me, it's progressive, but I don't know.
I
What
was
do I know?
really excited when I got to vote for. I'm in the Academy when I got to vote for Catherine Bigelow for Best
That must have been,
Director.
yeah.
First of all, I never vote for the person who wins. Like this was the first time in my life I actually voted for the winner. But I think that I do get a special pride and get really excited when female directors make great films and get awarded, and because it means that there's another perspective out there, even not just as a filmmaker, but as a film goer. It's boring to see the same perspective, So
But do you feel like it has to be in a special category? Like, you know what I mean? Shouldn't the women and the men all be mixed up together?
It absolutely should be, but at this point, I'm very aware of it because it is still, unfortunately, a limited thing, and it's also people of color, people of certain ethnic backgrounds, like Middle Eastern. Like to me, that's a draw to a film. I get excited when I see a different perspective.
Well, and the reality is, because of the statistics, Cannes this year, like how many women directors are in Cannes?
Zero.
I mean, it is something that while we want to say that we don't think of ourselves as women directors, we have to look at the reality of what's happening and the reality of how difficult it is to tell female stories, not just be a woman director, but be a woman director then telling female stories. It's, if we're not looking at that, then how are we going to change it? So in a way, yeah, absolutely, we have to show up, we have to talk about it, we have to look at it, and we have to insist that we are directors.
Yes, and Kathy also said, and this is absolutely true, this is what you're saying, is behind, you know, once you're behind the camera, I mean, you're doing what anybody would do behind the camera. I mean, you know, you're framing your shots, you're working with actors, you're dealing with, you know, a huge group of people, and it's not a gendered activity. I mean, it's the activity of directing, which is not gendered. So, you know, once you're there, you're looking through the camera like anybody else is looking through the camera, right? I think the question is just how, if you were, you know, sort of at a dinner party or walking down the street and you stopped to ask people who are your favorite directors, or can you name 3 women directors, I think you'd have a hard time getting people to be able to say that. And I you know, our European comrades are many as well. I mean, more and more, you know, I looked sometimes to Australia or to other countries, and especially France, to see that, in fact, there are more and more women. So hopefully there will be knowledge that we depend upon distributors, we depend upon studio people, we depend upon film festivals to really support the work that we do. Anyway, I want to be able to give you guys a chance to ask some questions. So how will we do that? I'm just going to call on people whose hands are up and way back there. Yes.
I have quite a practical question, because one of the things, I'm a student at Columbia now, and you know, Nicole, you were talking about it took you 6 years to get your first feature off the ground, and several of you talked about the same kind of situation. And how did you actually make a living during that time?
I did.
Anyone?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, yes. Okay, yes.
We're live, just so you know, we're live on the internet, so we just need to repeat the question.
Okay, so the
That's what I
question is,
signed.
how did you make a living, Nicole, while you were getting your films together in the first 6 years, or at other times?
Or in between even.
In between making
Right,
films.
right. Everybody.
For everybody, okay.
Before I made the first film, I just had regular jobs. I was a secretary, I was a PA, clothing stores, you know, regular everything, and writing at the same time. And then between the films, I've been able to work in the movie business, writing for studios, directing for TV, stuff like that.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, you've all embraced movie making as a career, obviously, but you're also writers. What you want is a great movie, of course. Do you tend to bias your own work, your own creativity, your own writing in terms of choices that you make, as opposed to always be open to new properties that are developed, other properties?
As writers, do you continue to be interested in other scripts that other people write that you might want to direct, as you're saying? Right.
They want to make a great movie.
Yes.
And they're capable writers as well. So do you basically seek from your own inspiration, or are you always open for properties, finding a great property that you can translate?
Oh, okay. So are they working from personal experience, or looking at other scripts that you may also want to sign on to direct? Anybody? Yeah.
We were just talking in the back about, you know, how you make a film, and then for me, I was like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I don't have another story to write right now. I really want to find a great book or a great script and do somebody else's work. And I think until you make a certain number of films or get a certain amount of attention, the properties that get sent your way are probably not better than what you imagine you could create yourself out of your own imagination. So I've been looking for that for a long time, and now after having done this for a while, you know, I feel like I'm finally at the place where I'm comfortable to you know, get involved in book adaptations and get involved in the rewriting of scripts that, you know, I didn't originate, that didn't come from my own ideas, but to revise them so that I find myself in them, but they aren't my original idea, or they're not autobiographical. So maybe that just comes with kind of getting a certain amount of story out of your system and just being done with yourself for a while. or getting to a point where you just stuff that's just better comes your way, and it's exciting, and then you find a different aspect of the craft, and that's exciting.
And you can make that your own,
Yeah.
as you begin to work on it.
Right.
Did anybody else also want to answer that question of what other jobs you have when you're it's a really good practical question, is how do you survive in between films or before you get your film made? Anybody have any interesting, yeah?
I mean, one of the ways I did was through grants. In the last 2 years, I would not have made it if I didn't have 2 major grants, one last year, one this year, and that was enormous.
Yeah.
That was what allowed me to sort of focus on my own work.
Good.
I did all kinds of crazy jobs. Whatever I could get. I worked for like an ophthalmologist. I worked, my son, this is, of anything I've done in my life, my son is most proud of the fact that I worked at FAO Schwartz at Christmas, which was honestly the worst thing ever. But then I did get into I became a casting director, and that was something that I was able to make a pretty decent living. And also I learned something that I used later on, and maybe there'll be a scene from FAO Schwartz in one of my future movies.
Yes, go ahead.
Getting back to the celluloid ceiling question for just a moment, did you ever have a project that you really wanted and it was given to someone else that was a man, that you think that you should have taken the project? It sounds like you all have your own projects. Since you're successful at your own projects, and they're wonderful films, were you being offered other projects? I know you said you were, but were there any projects that you really wanted and you found that they were not offered to you and offered to someone else? Like Catherine Hardwicke did the first Twilight film, and then she wasn't allowed to direct the other two.
The question is about getting offered other screenplays or other work to do, or have you ever been offered something or somebody else, for example, a man got the job, right? Just for example.
Yeah, totally, many times. But
yeah, I mean, I can't even remember now. I've flirted with so many projects and, had those meetings, but nothing ever came of it.
Right.
So.
Yes.
Yeah, and the funny thing is you actually do a lot of preparation for those meetings. I've discovered recently. Like days of work, and then you get there and you're like, oh, you want to hire a British director? Okay,
oh. Dan, go ahead.
It's really true that Columbia's had a lot of successful women directors. Do any of you have any thoughts about why that is?
Why has Columbia produced so many successful women directors? Thank you, yes. Because we're great.
I think that the energy there is really, what is the word?
Feminine.
It's not feminine. It's very androgynous. I think that there's a great amount of really... Do you want to take over now? It's very feminine. No, the opposite. I think you go in there and you don't feel like, oh, this is a boys' club, or this is like, the Young Bucks or whatever. I mean, I think that there's a good ratio of women to men teaching, and I think that everybody comes. It has. I also think it has something to do with the tradition of the school, the kind of the auteur sort of idea that is still infused in the school. The kind of, I don't know what it is, but I feel like it really has a genderless quality, and I love that about it. I think it never comes up in classes. It just feels very equal and balanced.
Also, I would say I felt like the school was so based in the writing, that the writing was the most important thing, and to don't be shooting your videos until your script is at least shootable, and that kind of nurturing, I think, really helps a person develop without throwing them into a set without knowing what you're doing, or thinking, well, it just looks really good, so that's okay. That was never okay. Nobody really cared about how it looked in the learning process, and I think that really is successful.
Plus, you let us in. I mean, I think my class at Columbia was 60% women, and I don't know what other film schools are, but I don't imagine that they're 60% women.
Yeah.
So I think that the school has an emphasis on, looking for a diversity of voices and experiences and point of views.
I mean, I just want to add one more thing, and I think, unintentionally there was a kind of not looking favorably on people that came out with kind of imitative work. And I think that that's the kind of thing you might find at another top-ranked film school, this sort of director prowess, sort of, it's visually flashy and it's kind of like that movie or that movie. But I think, the faculty was pretty good at letting you know when they felt like it was derivative or it was sacrificing real story or real performance or these other qualities over, panache and flash. And I personally really valued that because I felt like I was learning how to visualize things and working on my style and what was appealing to me, but it was very understated. And what was much more important to me was, were my characters there and were my stories coming together. And I felt like that was a real value of the school.
When I was at Columbia, it felt like we were like the underdog. Like NYU was like the big, sort of muscle director school, and USC, and then Columbia was like this sort of like people would be like, oh yeah, Columbia, and there weren't a lot of rules, in a good way. Like there weren't a lot of rules. It really encouraged you to just figure it out yourself and go and do it. And I think those things like encouraged maybe like more outsiders, not mainstream folks, to find their way in. And it felt like that. I don't know what it's like now, but it certainly felt like that when I was
Too
there.
many rules now, guys? Yeah. Good. Yes. Brooke.
I had a question. Considering how hard finding financing is right now, are you developing multiple projects? And then is there a moment where you sort of had to put a project to bed? And what does that look like?
It's very sad. Putting a project to bed. I rarely work on multiple things. Oh, repeat the question.
Oh, sorry.
Do we work on...
wait, what was the question?
Do we work on many things
Oh.
at once?
It was do you work on multiple scripts and projects at the same time?
I don't work on too many. I get overwhelmed, and I try to focus on one thing at a time. But, or I'll try to. Right now, I have more things going on, or I did a little while ago, because I was afraid nothing was going to happen. So yeah, it gets scary out there. So I think I can't put all my eggs in one basket.
Yeah, this is the first time in my, long, short career that I've actually had a lot of things sort of in play at different stages of development. And really that's simply because, the economy is what it is. There's been more things that have come my way that are interesting to me, that I want to be attached to. I don't love, splitting my attention and energies all over the place, but I think part of like having a career out of this is learning how to micromanage your time and your focus and just staying with things that you really love and ushering them forward. But it's complicated. It's tricky.
Yes, go ahead.
Since you mentioned action films, do any of you want to do action films and or other genres than what would be necessarily expected of you?
Do any of you, are any of you interested in doing action films?
And
Or other genres of any?
What is expected of us?
Well, I mean, you talked before about female-centered film or with a story that you've done. So, in light of that, would you want to step away from that or do something different or outside?
I mean, I don't know. For me, it doesn't come down to female-centered film or male-centered or genre. It comes down to tone and are the characters interesting to me. Mm-hmm. So it could be kind of in any genre.
But I would not want to do an action movie no matter what.
I wouldn't want to do an action movie, but I did have a project that was greenlit but then fell apart. That was a contemporary retelling of The Bride of Frankenstein. And it was set at Columbia, by the way.
Oh.
And it came really close.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd love to do a thriller or something. But
Yeah.
not if there's a lot of action.
Psychological.
I would do an action movie.
Yes.
The only thing I wouldn't do is a horror movie. But it really just depends. It comes down to story. You know, if it's something I really connect to, then yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, my question is more on a personal level. It's in regards to family, how you balance that with your own work life. It may seem a bit cliche, like how this will balance family, but I mean, to a certain extent, you do serve a different role and take on different responsibilities in a family as opposed to males. And I'd just like to hear your own experiences in terms of balancing that with your work.
How do you balance family with work?
With difficulty, I guess. It's hard. I mean, there's things I didn't do because I wanted to be with my kids. I didn't travel to a certain thing because I wanted to be with my kids. Don't even want to read a script that takes place in France. It's like, don't even show, you know, I just can't do it. And that's okay for me.
Yeah, anybody else? Yeah.
It's hard. I
Yeah.
mean, you're constantly feeling torn. Like, you know, it requires a certain kind of focus and a certain amount of complete immersion and availability, even if you're in town, the town where your child is. I mean, it's just not a 9-to-5 job. And, you know, it's that, it's a vigilance about, is that okay? Do I have enough, you know, in play and intact? And is my family life kind of functioning the way, you know, it should for all intent and purposes? Or you know, am I missing the ball somewhere and I'm really going to regret that later? So I think, I don't know about you guys, but for me, it's been a constant inventory. And I only hope that, I have one kid, but I only hope that when my kid is older, it just gets less preoccupying. It's rough.
It's very hard, and you know, I make sure, like Nicole said, I won't, as much as I would love to make a film in Italy or something like that. It's a factor in deciding what work I'll do, and also I try to make sure that my son, I only have one child, comes to set. So my son is growing up on, he's literally been on 3 sets, film sets, and I try to have lunch with him every day, get him to the set. If I'm not going to see him, if I leave on an early call and he's already in bed, I bring him to set, and he's like, can call action, and it's like super fun. And but you know, there's no easy answer, and I do believe it's harder for a woman. That is a case where I think it's harder for a woman, and it's like finding a really good nanny.
Yes. Yes.
Would any of you consider bringing your children to set?
Oh yeah.
I try to keep one of them off my set.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those weird things where you got to be totally focused when you're working. So when you're, it's a really, you know, it becomes kind of divisive because you want to be with your kid and your kid wants to be with you, but you got to be with your film. So, you know, I think having them come like at lunch or, you know, if you can take a short break, but having my kid when they're young hang out for a long time is kind of a nightmare.
My kids just want to go where the candy is.
Yeah, and there's a lot of it, right?
Candy on.
No, it's amazing. Craft service is the biggest draw. My son still talks about
That's
it.
what my kids. My one
See,
son
it can be
thought
fun.
that's what I did. Somebody said, like, what does mommy do? And says something to do with Skittles.
I just also want to say that I always wanted my daughter to grow up knowing that I work and make things in the world, and so no matter what, I had to sort of give up a little bit in order to get that. And one of the most important things for me was to raise a child who is conscious of her mother being out there in the world and, you know, trying to make a difference and help people to see the world in a certain way. So that overruled everything. Yes.
I want to praise you all for the wonderful, original, and fresh characters that you have given. When I saw Lovely and Amazing, I could not believe that. And some of the high art and all these others. So if you're not getting wonderful, you know, a screenwriter like me can't get past your agent. I have tried. And if I don't have an agent, I can't get my scripts to you. So what do we do about that? Because we need to help others in, you know, getting ahead and moving forward. And
So as role models and people who are so admired, can people get you their scripts in any way, shape, or form?
She's accepting scripts.
Yeah.
No, the truth is
There's
that
a box.
even scripts that are submitted to me and I'm told to read them and it's urgent and it's, the best thing that ever happened, I'm really shitty at reading. So it's never a good idea to give me a script.
I help.
It's like books on tape would be better.
I mean, I was a mentor through several different things and mentored people and read a lot of scripts that way. I was a advisor at Sundance and I read a lot of scripts that way. I find, short of saying, hey, give me your script, which I could do, and I have done, and it's overwhelming. It is overwhelming. I don't know how I can help you without saying I'll read your script because, no, I know. No, I feel torn about that because it's a catch-22 and it's kind of hideous that happens. I tried to help this woman. She said, I can't get an agent. And I said, I'll watch your short film. I liked her short film. And she said, I have a feature. I said, I don't really have time to read the feature, but I'll have my agent watch your short film. And if he likes it, read your script. My agent just threw it in the garbage. Not literally, but she had to write me a month later. I never heard from your agent. It's ugly.
Sorry. Yes, go ahead.
You talked about how, the first time you step on set, you have to kind of pretend like you're being confident. That every movie that you work on is a learning experience. Is there a specific moment on a specific film where you gained that confidence, where things finally came together and you said, the movie is going to be okay, it's going to be a good movie, I know what I'm doing, finally?
When you step out onto set, there's always this element of, trying to have confidence or project that. Do you ever feel that, you sort of get over the fear factor and know that it's going to be a good movie?
I don't know if you ever know.
I don't think so.
You never know. Yeah. And I think you tell me, but I
have no idea.
I haven't made that many movies, but with each movie, at a certain point, you're getting videotapes or you're looking at film dailies or whatever, and you're like, yeah, it seems good, but I have no idea. And then, let's cut it together to see if we're shooting it right. It could be a disaster because you're not spending time in the cutting room. So I think it's a little bit of a crapshoot every time until you really get with the material and start working on it.
But I felt there's moments where you're watching a performance that's beautiful and they nailed it and you think, oh, okay, this is it, and then the next scene is shitty or something. But you go from kind of scene to scene and day to day, and by the end you think, I think like they said, I think it's going to turn out well.
It's funny though because I've found sometimes that performance, it's hard to judge things that are. It only takes one good take to make, you only need one good take for an actor, and sometimes an actor can go crazy on 5 takes and then hit it on the 6th. So sometimes the people you think are going to be the best in the movie on set are not the people who wind up the best in the film. It's very funny, the outcome of a movie is hard, especially when you're so close to it. I've learned to withhold judgment. Nicole asked me when I saw her before I started, I'm finishing a film, how is it? Is it great? I'm like, I have no idea. And I really don't. I know how it screens, I know how audiences react to it, but personally, it's very hard. You're so close to it.
Also you can have the experience of an actor will do something and it's really not how you imagine them doing a certain performance, right? And it's a very pivotal performance in the film. And so you can watch them do it, and that they're committed to doing it a certain way. And it's just one of those cases where you can't push them. They're convinced it's this, and you have to kind of let it go. And there's that sinking feeling oh, I think my film just got wrecked because of this person's ego. And then you put it together in the cutting room, and you're like, oh my God, thank the Lord that person had the instinct to do it that way, because the whole film is hinged on that. And if it was any different, it wouldn't have had that effect. And it's talk about leaps of faith. It's really, it's kind of nutty.
And at the same time that you never know and that you're sort of there on set and you're just sort of like, is this working? Is this working? If you go into it really prepared and you're getting what you think you need, then, you know, you're not terrified. Like that fear sort of goes away. And then you definitely do have those moments where you feel like you know what you're doing, you're accomplishing what you need. And then there are those moments of truth. And overall you end up, you know, sort of feeling decent about it.
Yes, back there, yeah.
You all are four really strong directors, but when you started out, did you ever feel that you had to work doubly hard just because you were a woman behind a movie camera to make people believe in your skills?
Did you ever feel that you had to work doubly hard because you were a woman behind the camera when you were starting out?
No, go ahead.
I think I worked harder than I had to. I think that in the beginning I felt like I did have to prove myself on the set and make sure everybody on the crew knew that I knew what I was doing. And I think that just probably made me look more insecure and like I didn't know what I was doing because I cared about that, trying to prove myself. And now I don't try to prove myself at all. I figure, oh, they'll be with me for a month. They'll figure out that I know what I'm doing. And they do, you know, really quickly. So I think I was my own worst enemy, actually, in that respect, on the set.
Anybody else on that one?
I mean, I'm just going to back her in the sense that I just had to work doubly hard because I was green. So, you know, I didn't really feel like it was because I was a woman per se. It was just because I was inexperienced. How any first-time
director feels. Yeah.
So I had to kind of fake it till I made it, and it did feel like faking my way through it.
But also, once you figure out that you know more than anybody else actually on the set because it's your story and you've lived with it the longest, and you know, once you really get that you have all the answers inside of you, then all of a sudden you light up and you realize that you know, you're the most knowledgeable because it's your story.
But when you're on the set with, especially like New York crews with like electrics and grips who have been doing it for like 35 years and talk about starting, you know, their first movie was like, you know, I don't know, Serpico or something like that. You're like, you do feel like, oh my God, like this person should be directing the new movie, not me. And
they feel that way too.
I know,
yes, they do.
And they let you know it.
Yes, they do. But you know what? They don't know how to direct a movie.
No, they don't. I figured that out.
And I had an experience where that happened, and it was a total disaster.
What do you
mean? Like what, a grip director?
No, I directed an episode of television, and the DP got fired, and the camera operator wanted to be the DP, but he was a camera operator,
right.
Even though he'd been doing it for 30 years. And I was kind of, you know, I got caught in that, and it was a disaster. I was really left like in a bad position. So you can get a lot of attitude from those people, but you know, you're doing it because that's what you know how to do.
Well, what I found that really works is what I really gained is tremendous respect for these people and appreciation. Like, you're only as good as your crew, and everybody on your crew matters, and everybody on your crew is important. I try to learn the name of every person, the first name, not the last name, because that's too much, of everyone who works on the movie, and hear their stories about making Serpico and like what New York was like in those days, and it's awesome. And I like request these people over and over again when I'm shooting because I've actually come to love and appreciate working with them.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was thinking about how there are obviously many inroads to having a successful film career, but what brings all of you together, what makes you, your common thread is that you all went through this MFA program at Columbia. To what degree can you talk about how that as an experience, the networking opportunities it's given you, how it has in various ways accelerated your career?
You've all gone through Columbia, so in what way, maybe through networking opportunities, has that helped or accelerated your career?
I don't think I'd have a career if I hadn't gone to Columbia. I mean, I was really, I really don't think I even knew what a director did before I started film school. I was so green. I really had a couple of ideas I had a couple of stories that I was burning to tell, and it just Columbia, you know, I went in knowing nothing, and I came out a filmmaker in a way. You know, I had my feature and I had my short film, and in that, you know, and 4 years after I graduated, I made my first feature. So it was the combination of my drive and you know, sort of need to tell the story with the school and the environment and, you know, everything that I sort of picked up.
Any networking stories that we have amongst us?
Well, I met Bob there, you know.
Her husband and her collaborator.
So that was a good network, I guess.
I told my story. You know, I was taking a class with Michael Hausman, and you know, he asked for volunteer, and I volunteered, and the next thing I knew, I was working with the person that paid for my movie.
Yeah. Good. We have time for one more question. Is there somebody burning to ask? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you all for being here. I had a question mostly for Nicole. Your films have meant so much to me, and I was wondering about, since each one seems to have something of a theme, which sometimes you can tell just from the title, what you're working through, but each one also includes these incredibly detailed and nuanced and surprising characters. And when you're writing, do you ever find yourself struggling with, like, oh, I'm kind of working on this theme, but I want to have this conversation in it too, but I don't want to pound home the theme either? That question makes sense.
The question is about theme and character, and do you feel torn? And sometimes, you know, how do you answer questions of theme with character?
Usually I have a general idea of a theme, and characters. I don't try to carry the theme throughout. I don't plot my movies before I write them. So I kind of decide it's going to be okay if it's a big mess of a first draft, and I'll get rid of stuff later, which is really helpful to me. So I don't try to drag. If I put the theme like some people do, like on top of your computer or something, and looked at the theme, I would be paralyzed. I just couldn't. Like, you can't write a movie about death, or, you know, how I feel about my mother. You know, it's just too big or something. You know, you have to write just about the character, and in the back of my mind, I have this idea. Yeah, maybe this is about a guilty person or unworthy, you know. So I wouldn't try to plot too heavily around big themes.
One more question from me. Is there any skill that you think is absolutely important for you to let everybody know that you need to have as a director? I mean, is it communication? Is it clarity? Is it you know, ability to, it's all those things, yeah. And I think maybe hustling, you have to be a good hustler. Anything else you can think of?
I'm not a good hustler. My producers are good hustlers.
Right, so having good producers, right? Teaming up with really, you know, experienced people. Just a last word to anybody in terms of, I mean, obviously stamina, you know, to be able to live with an idea for a very long time, or a script until you actually get it made. Can't be.
Know when to let go of it.
Yes, know when to let go, yeah. Anything else I'm forgetting? No, I got them all. All right.
Thick skin.
Oh, what?
Thick
skin. Oh, yeah, I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you for coming. Thank you guys a lot. Thank you. You fulfilled my dream.